Now let's look at how our scholars of fiqh understood these ahadith. There is a spectrum of opinion when it comes to gifting the good deeds to the deceased and our madhahib. Some of the madhahib were stricter and some of the madhahib were more open-minded in this regard. And what is very interesting, and I need you to pay attention, this is going to be a very detailed lecture, inshallah, the next half hour, and I don't want to lose anybody in this. It's going to be a very detailed lecture, as I promised you. It is my goal, inshallah, that this is the most detailed you have ever heard on this topic. Dare I say, maybe even, I haven't found any even on YouTube, to the best of my knowledge, in the Arabic language, because every person just gives what he thinks is the right answer. Very few are willing to mention other opinions and discuss them unbiasedly. Everybody wants to give his opinion and then reject the others. And my goal is to see, what has the ummah said? I'm not the first, I'm not going to be the last. What has 14 centuries of tradition said? What have our great fuqaha, Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Shafi'i, Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, Imam Teymiyye, what have they said before I possibly say perhaps this one seems to be stronger? So let's say what the classical ulama have said. And what we find, very interestingly, is that of the four madhabs, one of them has been consistent from its inception up until now. Two of them have kind of sort of flipped one way, and the last one has flipped the other way. In other words, three of the madhabs have initially had a certain position, and then over the course of Islamic history, slowly but surely they flipped around. And they've gone against the opinion of their own founders. And this is, by the way, not uncommon. For those who study fiqh, you will know it's not uncommon. A lot of times you have an explicit statement of the founder of the madhab, and then slowly but surely the later scholars collectively began changing the stance until the fatwa given in that madhab is exact opposite to what the founder of the madhab said. This is something that is well known to the students of fiqh. So, the one madhab that has been pretty consistent throughout its inception is the Hanafi madhab. MashaAllah, tabarakallah, they have maintained their consistency. The Hanafi madhab, from its beginning, has said that any and all good deeds can be gifted to the deceased without any restrictions. They are the most open-minded, generous. I like this word. Yes, they are the most generous. Gift any good deeds to the deceased. In fact, most of them even said, why stop at deceased? Give them to the living as well. You can give to the living as well. So we have, for example, Ibn Abidin, the author of the Hashiyah. He quotes from Bada'i al-Sana'i al-Kasani, the famous Hanafi scholar of medieval Islam. Al-Kasani died 587 and Ibn Abidin died 1134. Where are Hanafi scholars here? Anyway, these are all famous Hanafi ulama. Al-Kasani writes, it doesn't matter whether the one you gift a deed to is alive or dead, you may gift. And it doesn't matter whether you intend to gift before you do the deed, or you make up your mind after the deed has been done and you decide after it's been done, I'm going to give this deed to the dead. And the Hanafi madhab allows the gifting of any good deed, including salah. And of course, siyam and hajj and umrah and qira'at al-Quran, anything and everything can be gifted to anyone else. And they consider this to be the haqq, or the right of the one who has done the deed. Once you do the deed, you may then decide, even before or after, to give the reward to somebody else. That's your prerogative. And this has been their consistent position throughout history. As for the Shafi'i school and the Maliki, the Imams, both of them, began in one position, and then over the course of history, especially the Shafi'i madhab, the modern Shafi'i madhab has essentially completely gone against. And as for the Malikis, and out of the four madhabs, by the way, I must confess the Maliki madhab is the one I am the least familiar with in terms of development and whatnot. That's because geographically it occupies a region that is different than the other three, and I have better dealings with the books of the other three. Nothing against the madhab itself, my own personal issues. So To the best of my research, the Maliki madhab is still divided on this issue, even though the founder was explicit. What did Imam Malik and Imam Shafi'i say, the both of them? They said, Imam Shafi'i said, and I quote from Imam Shafi'i, other than fulfilling the wajib, such as the guy didn't fast or whatnot, and sadaqah and dua and istighfar, 4 things, no deed benefits the dead and nothing reaches the dead. This is from Imam Shafi'i directly in his Kitab al-Umm. Directly Imam Shafi'i says, either the guy didn't do a wajib, meaning in particular any wajibat that is left, then the other part, like the hadith says, man mata wa alayhi sawm, sama anhu waliyuhu. Okay, this is a wajib. There's some missing. Then you make up the wajib, but not nafil. Or sadaqah, dua and istighfar. And there is no controversy in any madhab about sadaqah, dua and istighfar. All the madhabs allow this, right? So the Shafi'is are the most restrictive. Imam al-Shafi'i is the most restrictive. And he explicitly says, nothing else can be done for the mayyit. And no deed reaches the mayyit other than this list that he gave over here. And then he quotes his evidences. وَأَن لَيْسَ لِلْإِنسَانِ إِلَّا مَا سَعَى. And إِذَا مَاتَ ابْنُ آدَمَ انقطع عمله إلا من ثلاث. So he quotes 2 solid evidences. And he goes, خلاص, deal with it. I've proven my case. وَأَن لَيْسَ لِلْإِنسَانِ إِلَّا مَا سَعَى. The son of Adam, man will have nothing other than what man himself strove to do. And these are not things that the man did. And when the person dies, everything is cut off except for 3 things. So Imam Shafi'i says, it is very clear, these things cannot be gifted to the deceased. Okay? Imam al-Nawawi, and Imam al-Nawawi is the greatest expounder of the Shafi'i madhab in medieval times. Right? The muhaqqiq of the Shafi'i madhab in medieval times is Imam al-Nawawi. Imam al-Nawawi writes in his Sharh of Sahih Muslim, volume 7, page 90, وَالْمَشْهُورُ فِي مَذْهَبِنَا أي مذهب الشافعي أن قراءة القرآن للميت لا يصله ثوابها وقال جماعة من أصحابنا يصل ثوابها وبه قال أحمد ibn Hanbal. Imam al-Nawawi says, the famous position of our school, and Imam is a Shafi'i, the famous mashhur it's called, the one that is well known in our school, is reciting the Quran for the deceased does not reach the deceased. However, some group of our school said it does reach the deceased, and this is the position of Ahmad ibn Hanbal. Okay? So, Imam al-Nawawi is saying in his time, and when did Nawawi die? 676. Imam al-Nawawi died 676 Hijrah, medieval times. Literally smack dab in the middle from our times to the Prophet. Imam al-Nawawi is in what we call medieval Islam. Imam al-Nawawi said, the famous position of the Shafi'i madhab is reciting the Quran does not reach the deceased. But he is saying, a large group though is disagreeing with this. Okay? Now, this is what he is saying. A large group. Over the course of the last few hundred years, that large group has become the dominant. And the original position of Imam Shafi'i himself has become almost discarded in the Shafi'i madhab. And modern Shafi'i scholars, pretty much almost all of them that I have come across, give fatwa based upon what was the minority opinion. And for example, if you look up the Darul Ifta of Egypt, which is, I would say, representative of the Shafi'i school by and large. It is now the Azhar Institute and whatnot. And you look at the Syrian scholars who follow the Shafi'i madhab, you just look at their fatwa online, you listen to their lectures. Generally speaking, they are completely open to the idea of gifting your good deeds to the deceased. Okay? So, the modern scholars of the Shafi'i school have given the fatwa that you may do good deeds and gift them to the deceased, and on top of this list is reciting the Quran. Is that clear? That is the Shafi'i madhab. The same goes for the Malikis. However, to the best of my knowledge, the Maliki madhab still has 2 opinions in it, and I'm not in a position to tell you which one is a majority in our times. I'll simply say I found Malikis on both sides of the spectrum in our times. Imam Malik himself was on the same madhab as Shafi'i. No gifting. Imam Malik wanted to close the door. And Al-Qarafi, the famous Maliki scholar, writes, in our madhab, there are three types of good deeds. One type that, without a doubt, its thawab does not go to anybody else except the one who does it, such as Iman and Tawheed and the Kalima. Nobody can accept Islam on behalf of somebody else, right? And another type that the scholars have agreed that somebody can do them for the deceased, and these are al-qurubat al-maliyya. This is the Maliki madhab. Monetary good deeds can be gifted to the deceased. Any monetary. Give me examples of monetary. That is what monetary means. Give me examples. Sadaqah, what else? Masjid, what else? Udhiyah, hospital, wells, anything where money is spent. The Maliki madhab says, wherever you spend money, then you can give to the deceased. This is the Maliki, Imam Malik's position. And he said, the third category, that which is the bodily actions, such as fasting and hajj and qira'at al-Quran. And he says, Malik and Shafi'i said, no, we cannot do that. This is Imam al-Qarafi, one of the icons of the Maliki madhab. And he quotes directly from Imam Malik. Malik did not allow this to happen. However, like with the Shafi'i madhab, developments occurred in the Maliki school. And large segments of the Maliki school began giving fatwa that it is allowed. And Ibn Hilal in his Nawazil, he writes, the fatwa of Ibn Rushd, the famous Maliki scholar. Ibn Rushd, one of the greatest Maliki scholars from Qurtuba, from Andalus. The fatwa of Ibn Rushd and the madhab of the majority of our Andalusian scholars, because the Maliki madhab flourished in Andalus, is that the mayyit benefits from the recitation of the Quran of the living, and the thawab reaches the mayyit. And he writes, this is Ibn Hilal, a scholar of the Maliki madhab, he writes, and this is the actions that the Muslims east and west have done. Meaning what? Reciting Quran for the deceased. This is something that everybody has done. وَاسْتَمَرَّ عَلَيْهِ الْأَمْرُ مُنْذُ أَزْمِنَةٍ سَالِفَةٍ. And the custom has been done since time immemorial, that when somebody dies, those that are alive read Quran for the ones that have gone away. Okay? So this is something that is now the later Maliki scholars, they seem to allow this in my brief research that I've done. And again, if there are any Maliki experts, please benefit us in this and tell me, and I will announce this next week, no problem. To the best of my knowledge, I have found both positions still in the Maliki school. Unlike the Shafi'i school, by the way, I have not found anybody. The Shafi'i school seems to have completely gone basically with the Hanafi madhab. So the Shafi'i is now similar to the Hanafi madhab in our times. The Malikis, we did this. Now, which madhab is left? The Hanbalis. Okay, the Hanbalis I say for the last, because they went the exact opposite. They went the exact opposite. Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal was of the opinion of Imam Abu Hanifa. Very generous. Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal allowed good deeds to be gifted to the deceased without any restrictions whatsoever. And this was the standard position of all Hanbali ulama without exception up until modern times, when the modern strand of Hanbalism, what should we say, reinterpreted the classical school, as they have done for many things as we know, and they preached a version of theology that is essentially unknown to the earlier ummah, and they began saying that it is not allowed to do anything for the deceased other than the three that is mentioned, which is not isalu thawaid al-mayyit, is basically sadaqah jari, etc., etc. So and because this is where most of us get our fatawa from, we log online and the fatawa of this group are very predominant. I'm going to deconstruct this inshallah very clearly.